Hey, welcome back to another Jet Up Johnny video. I'm Johnny, and today we're going to be doing a top 10 list of tight ends for the 2022 NFL season. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you, if you like this video, why not leave it a like? If you'd like to see more videos like this, why not hit the subscribe button? And I also encourage you to comment down below if you have anything that you disagree with this list, or things that you agree with, or things that you think that maybe I missed. Yeah, just feel free to comment whatever you're thinking about my rankings down below. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the top 10. So at number 10, the number 10 tight end in the league for me right now, Mike Gesicki of the Miami Dolphins. So I think Gesicki is a little bit one-dimensional in the way that he's mostly just a receiving tight end. I don't think that he offers too much in the blocking perspective, but what he has offered so far in his 4 years in the NFL has been a pretty solid receiving tight end. Last year he had 73 catches and 780 yards. That's some serious production from the tight end position. Actually, I'll throw a little honorable mention in right now for Hunter Henry, who I think was just left off this list for me. He's a guy that's been around for a handful of years now and was battling injuries for a while earlier in his career when he was with the Chargers. And I figured I'd want to mention him. Gesicki just beat him out for me, even though Henry's been a super reliable guy and he's a really good red zone threat. There's a little bit more dynamic receiving ability in Mike Gesicki, in my opinion. Coming in at number 9, I have TJ Hawkinson. I don't know if maybe I'm a little higher on him than some other people are. He was a guy that was drafted very high and maybe hasn't lived up to those expectations immediately. But at the same time, 2 years ago, he finished with 67 catches, 723 yards, and 6 touchdowns, which was a really solid second season in the NFL. And then last year, his season was cut short. He only played 12 games, but he still had 61 catches, 583 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So he was on a pace to have a better season than his previous year. So I really do think that Hawkinson is coming into his own. He's still only 24 years old, maybe 25. Yeah, he's just turned 25 somewhat recently. I think there's a bright future ahead for Hawkinson, and he'll probably end up, at least moving up a few spots in the next couple years. Okay, so number 8, I have Dallas Goedert. He's a guy that I have a hard time ranking. I think that he kind of ranked out well in like advanced metrics for tight ends last year, and I understand why. He finished with 830 yards on only 56 catches. He had a 14.8 yards per reception, that's a pretty high number for a tight end specifically. And so he's offering you a lot in the receiving game, and I couldn't ignore that. His track record before last year, I don't think was enough for me to put him higher than the guys that are in front of him right now. But he's real close with the next guy, I'll say, in my opinion, and we'll see where he goes from here. All right, so number 7 tight end in the NFL going into the season, I have Dalton Schultz, who really exploded last year onto the scene. The year before, he had his solid season with 600 receiving yards and 63 catches. But last year, man, 78 catches, 808 yards, 8 touchdowns. That is a monster season. Not everybody's a Travis Kelce. Spoiler alert, Travis Kelce's higher up on this list. I'll get to him later. Not everybody's that. And, like, if you can get this out of your tight end, that's awesome. And, 25 other teams at least in the NFL would say, hey, give me that guy as my tight end. Okay, so number 6, this is a little bit of a respect pick, but at the same time, he really closed the season well last year in his new environment. And if you haven't guessed already, it's Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals. He was one of the top, probably 3 tight ends in the league for what looks like maybe five years, something like that. He was consistently putting up 800 plus yards. One year he went over 1,000 with 116 catches. That's incredible. He's just been so solid for so many years. He had a lull in 2020 when there was a little bit of a split with him and Goddard in Philadelphia, and it seemed like Philadelphia was ready to move on from Ertz. And I don't necessarily think that they needed to, or that they should have been itching to do that so quickly, because the way he closed the season, 11 games with the Cardinals last year, 56 catches, 574 yards. That's a lot of production per game. That's a pace for another one of his 800-yard seasons probably. Like, he probably would have hit that if he played a full 17 with the Cardinals last year. And so I'm not ready to put him any lower on this list. Just barely outside my top 5 right now. So we've reached our top 5, and this is where it gets a little interesting. I think the next 2 were a pretty difficult decision for me, and I'm going to spoil it a little bit and say that I leaned toward experience. and it will probably backfire by the end of the season. But for right now, I lean toward experience. So number 5, I have Kyle Pitts, who, come on, 1,000 yards in your rookie season. That's unheard of. Only one touchdown. A little weird. Seems like probably will be an anomaly when we look back at his career. But 15 yards per reception. I was just saying Goddard with 14 and a half or whatever was like crazy. Pitts is doing it too. Pitts is just built different. Basically it seems like he's a wide receiver. He's only 21 years old. Man, the sky is the limit, or if there even is a limit for this guy. I think that it's very likely that, 2, 3 years from now, we're saying Kyle Pitts is the number one tight end in the league, or at least top 2, top 3, like solidified. Nobody can argue it. That's the type of trajectory that this guy is on right now. But right now, I'm going to leave him at 5, and it's probably going to backfire on me. Okay, so number 4, tough decision between Pitts and this guy. I have Darren Waller as the number 4 tight end in the league. I just really think that it was hard to give Pitts the edge already, even though if I think that his trajectory is leading him maybe past where Waller is. I mean, Waller 19 and 20 had over 1,100 yards both years. He had 9 touchdowns in 2020. Last year, the season was cut short, only 11 games, 665 receiving yards, 55 catches. I'll be interested to see where his target share goes now with Devontae Adams there. But there's a potential that it could help. It could be, less double coverage on him. Maybe, I think it's probable that he was double covered a decent amount the last year or two. I know that other people stepped up in Las Vegas to a certain extent, but man, Waller was, a matchup nightmare, and so I'm sure he drew some extra attention. And maybe he'll be able to draw more single coverage and it'll work to his advantage. But 2 1,100-yard seasons in a row and then a shortened season to follow it up, I think it would be a little disrespectful for me to have him below a guy that only had 1 year in the books. Okay, so number 3. I think some people are going to maybe disagree with me here. They might want him to be 2 or 1, potentially. I have Mark Andrews as the number 3 tight end in the league. He had obviously an incredible year last year, 1,361 yards and 107 catches, 9 touchdowns. He was what felt like half of the Baltimore offense last year. I think maybe the only reason that I don't have him at 2 is because, this was 500 more yards than he had ever had in his career in his first 3 years. And so I maybe would like to see it one more time to kick him ahead of the next guy if I'm going to do that. But he's always been a red zone target. He's had 10 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, 9 touchdowns the last 3 years working past to future. And I think it's likely that a lot will be on his shoulders again this year because Baltimore hasn't done too much at the wide receiver position. So I'm totally open for him to repeat last year, and maybe I'll bump him up to number 2 spot. But for right now, I'm leaving him at 3, which is still, I think, a tremendous honor to be a top 3 tight end in the league. I just feel like the top 2 are kind of still on a different tier than the rest. So without further ado, let's go into number 2, George Kittle. And George Kittle, so obviously like 4 years ago, 2018, 88 catches, 1,377 yards. That was his second season, and it kind of came out of nowhere to a certain extent. Just crazy, just production that I think wasn't expected, at least at that point in his career. And so he's had trouble with injuries since then. The next year, missed a couple games, still had over 1,000 yards. The following year after that, only played half a season, had 634 yards. That's a pace for 1,200 yards. And then last year, missed 3 games, had 910 yards. So, I mean, his pace, the last 4 years, his pace each season was at least 1,000 yards. That's the type of guy he is. And then, he's an incredible blocker. He's just like all around like a fantastic tight end. He'll do whatever you need. He could probably fit in whatever scheme, but obviously in the Shanahan scheme, it seems like it's the perfect fit for him. And I expect him to continue to do well. It'll obviously be interesting to see with the young quarterback who doesn't have any experience what kind of production Kittle will have and whether it'll drop off. But what a useful weapon it is for your young quarterback. Okay, drum roll. No, we don't need a drum roll. This is pretty obvious. I don't think that it's fair for anybody to have anybody else at number 1 position. Number 1 tight end in the league has been for probably 4 years at least now, Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is probably heading towards being one of the best tight ends of all time. And I'm sure people could probably make an argument that he's heading towards being the best tight end of all time, just based on production. Right now, he's had 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons at the tight end position, which is incredible. The 2 years before that, 875, 862 yards. Every year that he's played, he's had at least 850 yards. Those first, his first year, he didn't even play. This is just incredible consistency. Nobody can cover him, obviously. And this wasn't all with Mahomes, obviously. Mahomes came into the picture 2018, so that just accounts for 4 of the 1,000-yard seasons. And then he had 2,000-yard seasons before that, and he had the 800 plus before that. I'm not sure what else there is to say. I don't think that I really need to work too hard to defend this selection. Travis Kelce is the best tight end in the league until proven otherwise, until he slows down, which who knows? It doesn't seem like he'll ever slow down. All right, so there you have it. That's my top 10 tight end rankings for the 2022 NFL season. I'll have the summary over here somewhere, just so we can see a quick rundown, 1 through 10, 10 through 1, whatever. Yeah, I'd love to hear where you think that I made errors, who you think I'm forgetting. I definitely I went through all the tight ends in my head that are starting for teams, and I feel like I did a decent job. There were a couple of guys that were a little hard to decide between leaving off the list or not. I already mentioned Hunter Henry, but there was a couple other guys that I was considering. But when it came down to it, I felt like I had a pretty solid 10, and then it came down to ordering them, and there were hard decisions here and there, but I think I felt pretty good about it. Anyways, thanks for stopping by, watching this video. Leave it a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. If you have any ideas for future rankings or videos you'd like to see, drop that in the comments too. I'd love to see that. I'm always open to ideas. But that'll do it for this video. Thank you for stopping by. This has been Jet Up Johnny, and I'll see you in the next one.